What is up, Call of Duty fans? It's good to see you guys back. Of course, in IHOLDSHIFT. Been a bit of a weird hiatus time. Things didn't quite really work out, so all my COD content will be coming right back here to the channel. Hopefully you guys will appreciate that, enjoy that, as much as I enjoy my Blue Barracudas jersey that I have, or shirt rather. And I was really excited about this, but I didn't realize the yellow was gonna pick up on the green screen, so kind of an awkward start. Let's talk about our final power rankings of the regular season for the CDL. This is it. This is the last one. Everything else will be just be determined by full results from playoffs. So let's dig in. Number 12, Seattle Surge. No one was surprised. This has been what I think we all came to expect really over the last handful of weeks. The Seattle Surge has just not been in a good place. Most recent weekend at Toronto didn't really boast any kind of major success stories to really kind of give us much hope. Still losing every single search they play, and what was their best mode in domination, they got smoked in both the dom maps that they played. It's not good for Seattle going into playoffs where they're going to have to start in the losers bracket and play up against the Paris Legion, a team that has gotten much better at search and destroy. Things not good for Seattle right now. I got them finishing 12th. I've got them finishing overall in the playoffs in 12th. Things not looking good. In my 11th position, it will be the Los Angeles Guerrillas. No change here. Again, it's just kind of hard to get a reading between Seattle and Los Angeles. Who's the worst team between the two? It kind of feels like any given day, either of the two could beat each other. And honestly, that's kind of the only storyline for Seattle, since the only team they're able to beat is Los Angeles Guerrillas for the most part. Here's the other bit of bad news, though. This is a Los Angeles Guerrillas team that we were talking about had been much better at search and destroy. They were one of the top 4 teams in the league at one point at search and destroy. Over the last 6 games, they've won 1. One search and destroy has gone their way. That's not good. They play up against an Optic Gaming LA team in the losers bracket round 1, in which they don't match up particularly well versus. And beyond that, there are just major issues still in domination. This team is just completely lost when it comes to dom. Some of the most embarrassing losses we've seen in domination this year have been with Los Angeles Guerrillas on the receiving side of it. So 12th in hardpoint, 12th in domination, not winning search and destroy maps. Your hopes aren't really all that great for LAG going to the playoffs. Another team that I'm interested to see, mostly because of the recent roster changes, the Minnesota Rocker. It's interesting because I'm not really surprised to see that there was a roster change, but I'm surprised that it was GodRx that's the one getting the bench in place of Exceed, and not someone like Asim or Alex or somebody up front. Because who's going to snipe now? GodRx is one of the top 3 snipers in the league, and now you're going to be swapping off. And this is a Minnesota Rocker team that's not good at search and destroy. They rank 11th there. So a lot of questions as far as Minnesota. They will start in the winner's bracket, but that's the only bit of good news they have for the playoffs. They play New York first, a matchup that's not good for them. And then I'm pretty sure they drop down and play Optic Gaming LA. Another matchup that is not terribly great for them, as they've lost to them now twice out of the 3 times that they've played, only having a 3-8 map total record versus them. That's not very good. So not very high hopes for Minnesota to finish out their season. In my 9th position, the Paris Legion. Big improvements from Paris the last time we saw them at the London home series. Search and destroy looked better. Their respawn overall is getting stronger, getting more complete, getting more well-rounded. There were still a couple of bad losses on both the domination and the hardpoint, but not nearly as occurrent as they were in the past. This is good stuff for Paris. Now, can you find a way to continue to get your search on a much higher level and continue to find a way to battle up on good map mode combos for your hardpoint and your domination specifically? If you can continue to do well in search, if you find a way to steal your hardpoint and maybe steal the domination, this is a Paris team that very well could make a little bit of a run in the losers bracket. They play Seattle first, pretty easy win, and then I'm pretty sure they get London or Toronto after that, both of which, well, depending on who you get, you're going to feel more favorable about versus the other, but both of which they have winning head-to-head records versus, so there's that to at least consider. In my 8th position, I've got the London Royal Ravens. It's a small hit here for London, only because I like one team just barely above them, than London in particular. Scraps has looked great lately. Can't really go without talking about how Scraps has looked in the last couple of weeks. If London can continue to get better, especially in domination, with Scraps continuing to frag out at this type of a level, this is a London team that could potentially surprise some teams come playoffs. The bad news is they play up against the Toronto Ultra First, who are also looking extremely hot. The other bit of bad news is that London overall is the 11th best domination team in the league. They are 7th in hardpoint, 6th in search. Those aren't bad, but the domination is their biggest flaw by far. They need to get better there, and honestly, they need to make sure they can round out some of these search and destroy games that have been close, that you feel like they should win but haven't been able to. So that's kind of what I'm looking for London. Overall, I think that they're right there, though, in my 8th position, mostly because I've got Optic Gaming in my 7th position. And this is the one team that I think could really make waves playoff-wise because, unfortunately, they do start in the loser's bracket. They could potentially put together a pretty special run, though. This last weekend was pretty evident of that. They were able to beat the Chicago Huntsmen, and even though they lost in 3 the Atlanta FaZe, they played them relatively close with a couple of exceptions. I thought that overall, though, this last weekend was pretty much a big net positive. It's showing that Optic Gaming have no problem with teams that are below them, and they can compete with teams that are above them. That's the formula for success when it comes to playing up against a major squad who very well could get upset in the winner's bracket. What does that do to their mental status as they have to now find a way to play up against an Optic Gaming team that already knows their path? Win every single game. Make a loser's bracket run. I think that's a very nasty mentality, and Optic, I think, could really run with that if they can continue to improve over the next 3 weeks. Going into my 6th position, my top 6, a little bit of a hit for the New York Subliners. I think the big question for me about New York is this team just a one-trick wonder on the weekend where 10mm was GA'd? Because since then, we've seen kind of a more checkered history, which we normally have associated with the Subliners outside of what was their own home series. So, for New York, my big question mark really kind of lies in what are you going to be able to do in the search and the domination. They were putting together a really nice stretch of dom, but when everything turned back on the 10mm, they got smoked by Dallas, they got smoked by Paris. That's not good. You have to be better there if you're New York, considering that you are the 9th best team in both the search and the domination. The good news is their hardpoint has consistently been getting better and better, and you're seeing that represented in the 4th place ranking that they hold there. In my 5th position, a boost for the Toronto Ultra, who looked absolutely insane. Absolutely insane this last weekend. And it's not just the fact that they won. And it's not even just the fact that they won versus a very stacked home series roster of teams to play up against. It's how they won. A lot of clutch moments, a lot of 250 to 247 hard points, a lot of 6-5 or 6-4 search wins. That's great. That's great resiliency, that's great rehearsal, and that's great experience for a Toronto team that is still learning. The better news, you've got 3 weeks to prepare for a London team in which you feel like you should be doing pretty well versus, and then you can maybe even foreshadow to the Florida team, of which you're 1-1 against. Granted, they haven't played in a long time, but you have some good video to go over against Florida, and I think this is the Toronto team that very well could surprise some people in this winner's bracket. Do not sleep on the Ultra. They can make some pretty big waves. 4th position, 2-point hit for the Chicago Huntsmen, who did not have a great weekend this last weekend. They barely got past Seattle. They didn't get past Toronto. They got smoked a little bit by the Optic Gaming LA squad. Has to change. Has to. Absolutely needs to change for Chicago. I don't know if it's because their practice has not been taken as seriously as they need to be taking the back end of the season or what the case is, but you've got to find a way to regroup quickly because there were a lot of problems for Chicago this last weekend. Specifically, their domination looked very flawed compared to what it normally does. That has to get back on its winning ways because you're sitting in the winner's bracket with a bye. You have to play up against either New York or Minnesota. And in that matchup versus New York, they have done well versus you. So don't just overlook what New York could potentially do. And then beyond that, you have to play Atlanta after that. So yikes, that's a tough scenes if you do get past that first scene. In my 3rd position, still sitting here are the Florida Mutineers, who I think absolutely have showcased us that their consistency is getting back, even though they did get beat in 0-3 fashion to the Dallas Empire. All 3 maps were very, very close and very, very winnable. Beyond that, though, they also played Dallas in the very beginning where it went map 5, and the same thing can be held true. Their wins were very good wins, and their losses were barely losses. So that's all good stuff for the Florida Mutineers. I feel good about this team. I think they very well could put together a special run because they do play up against potentially Dallas again, and you feel like you've learned a lot about that team in the last week. So hopefully there's some favor to be found for Florida as they try to make a run. That said, though, in my 2nd position are the Dallas Empire, and this is a team that I feel like absolutely showcased that they've got some big hot streaks, but at the same point, if not everybody is participating, they're pretty vulnerable. Clayster had a pretty rough weekend in the first opening maps of almost every single series, of which it cost them versus Atlanta, and it cost them again versus the Toronto Ultra. The good news only being that you did find a way to beat Florida. So, for Dallas, you got to get your ARs online. They got to be there. If everyone, though, for Dallas is playing at their highest level, this is a championship caliber team without question. The question is, are they going to be all playing at their highest level? That's where I really sit right now. But Dallas overall, they're the second best search team, the best domination team, but have taken a little bit of a bounce around in their hard point, only ranking 5th at the moment, which of course leaves room up top for the Atlanta FaZe. A big bump for them, and I think it's merited. We had questions about them after the meta swap, even immediately beyond that when they were trying to relearn the meta. A couple of questions still lingering for Atlanta, but then this last weekend we saw how dominant that this team can be, just like they were at the beginning of the season. They're hitting their stride again. And to be fair, as much as I don't want to take anything away from Toronto, I really do feel like Atlanta gave away some moments versus that Toronto Ultra team in the grand finals. They 6-0'd them on a search. They 250 to 143 them on a Petro hardpoint. They unfortunately weren't able to close out the Gunrunner, and then beyond that, they weren't able to close out either the Map 5 or the Gunrunner hardpoint. So I think that this is a game that if Atlanta could have back, they'd probably beat Toronto. But this next 3 weeks, you need to make sure you're still staying clutch, staying still complete. Don't give away too many opportunities because Atlanta has been known to do that. But that said, I think they're still looking like the best team, and they are my personal favorite to win it all in a couple of weeks. Let me know what you guys think. It's good to be back. I hope that you guys enjoy having me back. I'm going to be trying to put more content like this out in the next couple of weeks here as we lead up to playoffs, and then we'll see what happens with the off season. So alongside of my Valorant content that I've been putting out on a regular basis, I hope to be over the next 3 weeks doing the same thing with CDL content for you guys to get geared up for those playoffs. So make sure if you're not already subscribed, you do so now. There'll be more coming. And until the next video, hope that you guys out there keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.